Well, we've come to another one of those times of the year. It is the Christmas, holiday, winter solstice, Kwanzaa, Hanukkah season, whatever you want to call it. Happy whatever to you and yours. Hopefully you guys are having a great, safe time. This week we're going to talk about what's been going on the past week in the world of pro wrestling and sports entertainment. One of the biggest things that came out that was a shocker to me is... we have a new president in New Japan Pro Wrestling. Hiroshi Tanahashi has been named the president and representative of New Japan Pro Wrestling. A lot of things have been going on. We covered it the other week that a lot of the Japanese promotions, 9 of them in total, joined this new United Japanese Pro Wrestling group, which is... for those of you who don't understand, and I've talked about this a lot on social media with a lot of people, that the term indie in the West is kind of a misnomer, because indie came out of the fact that there used to be a National Wrestling Alliance, not what Billy Corgan's NWA is today, but the old NWA, which was all the promotions in the different territories kind of banding together and having some sort of a unionized group. And any wrestling company that was outside of the National Wrestling Alliance, as the term and the name suggest, were considered independent because they were independent of the National Wrestling Alliance. Japan has apparently done a similar thing now with New Japan, All Japan, DDT, Stardom, and a bunch of others coming together for this unified promotion, this unified front, to really help Japanese wrestling establish more of a hold in Japanese culture. It's kind of lost some of its appeal over the decades. Of course, back in the 80s and 90s and the 70s, wrestling was massive in Japan. It's had a resurgence as of late over the last couple of decades, or the last decade, I should say, but that's fallen off since the pandemic. And a lot of that contributed to them uniting. And of course, we also we'll theorize that a lot of it is to kind of stave off the big guys in the West, the WWE, from coming in and establishing an NXT UK. Although All Japan is working with NXT, a couple of NXT stars, including William Regal's son, will be wrestling over in All Japan coming up soon. So it seems to be right now that the Japanese understand the landscape, and they're trying to take measures to not only improve their standing in the country, but also around the world, as Japanese wrestling in itself is unique. It's kind of like anime. Anime, there were a bunch of different companies. They didn't really band together in the same way, but they had a distinct style, and they wanted to make sure that was preserved. The Japanese companies didn't get taken over by Disney to make all the Japanese anime more Disney-fied. And I think that's kind of the same way I would like to see Japanese wrestling go, that it doesn't get taken over by the Disney of the wrestling world, which is WWE, and get more WWE-ified. But time will tell. There are a lot of lines being drawn, and we'll talk about this as next week, or later this week, as we get into the year-end videos. But that was the biggest news that came out of Japan. We, of course, are rocketing towards Wrestle Kingdom, which I think before was going to be kind of a lukewarm Wrestle Kingdom, and now with a lot of things that are going on, it's shaping up to probably be, it might go down being one of the more important Wrestle Kingdoms, even though it doesn't seem that way from looking at the card. It might be a very important one and a very significant one in the future. Time will tell on that. It's also interesting that Zack Sabre Jr. will now be facing the president of the company, defending his TV championship at Wrestle Kingdom against Tanahashi. So that's fun. And Tanahashi's also still one of the Never Six-Man Tag Team Champions, along with Okada and Tomohiro Ishii. And of course, there's all the rumors about Okada and what he's going to do come February 2024. Lots going to be happening in New Japan and in Japanese wrestling in general in 2024. It's going to be a very important year. We're going to have to see how that goes. Over in AEW, the Continental Classic, the main season has ended for both the Gold and the Blue League. We have a very interesting turn of events for the first ever tournament of this type in AEW, and the first tournament of its type in many years in the West. The Gold League ended up, and the Blue League ended up with some unconventional finals that are going to be had this coming week up on Dynamite. So the what I'll call the Dynamite League, we had Jay White get yet again another victory over Jon Moxley. Now, for those of you who don't remember from the G1 several years ago, Jon Moxley's one appearance in the G1, he was undefeated for the first 5 matches, lost a match to count out to Toru Yano, I should say, and did lose a straight up one-on-one match with Jay White in that G1. And here was possibly, making the score even, but it didn't turn out that way, as Jay White did get the win over Jon Moxley, which now sets up for us to have a 3-way between Moxley, Jay White, and Swerve Strickland as the finals of that particular league. It's hard to pick this one, man, because there's definite reasons that Swerve Strickland could win this. There's definite reasons for Jon Moxley to win this. You could go to a Moxley-Danielson finals, possibly. You could go to a Danielson-Swerve Strickland finals, which I'd be interested in. You could go to a Swerve Eddie Kingston finals. A Jon Moxley Eddie Kingston finals would be interesting. And, of course, Jay White, who's kind of, well, not really, kind of. He is the most experienced, by far, of all the guys in the Continental Classic. He is in the finals here, so a Jay White Eddie Kingston match, which would be a rematch. If you remember, Eddie Kingston was the guy that officially booted out Jay White from New Japan altogether at that match earlier this year, which Jay White was still in New Japan, but he couldn't wrestle in Japan, and then he lost the match to Eddie Kingston, so then he was completely out of New Japan altogether. So there's a storyline there, and we have never seen Jay White versus Bryan Danielson, which that's a match I want to see. Whether it happens in the finals of this tournament or not, who knows? And as you can tell from the other side, it came down to a rematch from earlier in the tournament between Danielson and Eddie Kingston. And Eddie Kingston, who was called a bum by Danielson, who took a sign from a fan or a plant and held it up to the camera after he beat Kingston in the regular league matches, now has a bit of revenge on his mind. They had a great interaction after Kingston won his match against Andrade El Idolo to get into the finals, or the semifinals, the playoffs. And Danielson just kind of laughed at him, and it's like, you're still a bum. And then, Danielson sets himself up as a heel in this. I'm kind of thinking we're going to get Eddie Kingston going on to the finals. And again, it could be Mox. I'm kind of leaning towards Mox and Kingston in the finals of this. But, any combination from out of this group of 5 guys is going to be awesome. My thoughts on the Continental Classic now that the main league matches are over, I think they did a great job. It started out kind of slow, as the G1 starts out kind of slow. You didn't really have those marquee first round matches. That's one of the things that the G1 does, is that there's always in the first week a bunch of matches that you haven't seen or rematches that you really wanted to see. They didn't really have that in the Continental Classic, but the drama, the sports-based drama, really came out over the last 2 weeks. Daniel Garcia finally getting his win in the tournament, beating Brody King, and that was an excellent match. Eddie Kingston fighting for his life, beating over Andrade, who was a terror during this tournament. Andrade El Idolo was a monster in his league. The whole scenario with poor Jay Lethal and Mark Briscoe having to fight for honor on the last night, and that got a standing ovation. The Continental Classic, I had my doubts about it, and I had my hopes about it. I have to say my hopes overweighed my doubts. They did an excellent job. Everyone played their roles right in this tournament. I like the way things shaped out with the one draw we got with Claudio and Danielson. I like the storylines of a lot of guys in the tournament. Andrade, like I said before, he had a great storyline during the tournament. I liked the storyline with Jay Lethal and Mark Briscoe in the tournament. Daniel Garcia's story was great. The whole playing off of Danielson's eye injury, which, can be a little cringy at times and was during the tournament. That was a cool storyline during the tournament. So a lot of things were established here that made the Continental Classic hopefully critical success amongst fans. Now, I'm going to move on to something else now, because speaking of critical success, a lot of fans online, especially AEW fans, have noticed, and I have noticed now, a lot of what is considered the wrestling media or wrestling influencers, with the exception of a few, have been very, very, very hard on AEW lately, unfairly so. And I'm noticing editorial articles from Sportspedia or whatever it's called, and what culture and all of these headlines, and some of you guys in my comment section on some videos over the last couple of weeks have commented about that you've seen a lot of the YouTubers and a lot of the podcasters with all of these clickbait doom and gloom videos about AEW. Yet I have noticed the last couple of weeks that, you know, AEW had an attendance issue. It seems the attendance has gotten a little bit better, where, I mean, it's just a simple, obvious visual thing where you can see the right side of the arenas, which have been dark, you know, really over the fall. Now they're kind of filled in. So I don't know if there is that much of an increase. It's enough of an increase that it's noticeable to me that the right side of the arena isn't completely black now, and you can see fans over there. So I don't know if they've had an increase. Somebody who's, you know, following and tracking that stuff could probably tell me whether or not it is or not. But I would say that if that is the case, that they have increased, you know, even by 500 more people in attendance over the last couple of weeks in AEW for Dynamite and Collision, I think it was great. Collision had a great crowd on Saturday. Given that it's a holiday, we're going to a holiday, that was actually kind of surprising to see how decent the crowd was in Texas. The content has been excellent. Of course, there's still some of the goofy stuff going on. Some people who've been kind of left out of storylines that were started and then stopped. The Young Bucks were starting some sort of storyline about them being spoiled brats, but we haven't seen them in 2 weeks. I do know that I think Matt Jackson's wife is no longer working with AEW as of recently, so a lot of backstage changes going on with AEW, which is to be expected. People are making a lot about it, but, you know, it happens all the time. I'm old enough to remember when I was a young wrestling fan in the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s, like, production staff leaving a company was not news. Like, nobody knew who those people were, and it didn't really matter to anything. But now it's like, oh my God, you know, one of the Young Bucks' wives is no longer working. AEW's collapsing. Oh, this guy, Kevin Sullivan, he's no longer there. Oh, AEW's falling apart. It's like, guys, calm the hell down, man. It's like, people, I think, are just invested in reliving the Monday Night Wars, especially people who did not live during the Monday Night War. And as a fan who was of adult age during the Monday Night War, let me tell you, at the time it seemed cool, but since 2001, I really am having buyer's remorse from WWE beating and essentially beating and then taking out WCW, even though WCW closed for other reasons. It wasn't really particularly WWE, but they definitely contributed to WCW's decline and eventual demise. We have a second wrestling company now that is a Major League Wrestling company, and I don't know what needs to change in the wrestling community, but something needs to change to stop wishing doom and gloom. And I'm not just saying this for AEW, because there was a lot of doom and gloom wished on WWE a couple years ago, and I'm like, and I saw a lot of you guys in the comments, those of my longtime subscribers, say, you know, I don't want WWE to go out of business. I just want a different type of wrestling that draws more than, you know, 1,000 people to a small little high school gym to be part of our wrestling options. So, you know, it's not just WWE stuff. WWE is good at what they do. They've been a lot better at it lately, but we want something else too. Variety. That's the spice of life. Speaking of WWE, things are moving quite rapidly now towards the Royal Rumble. We have a lot of guys set up to challenge Seth Rollins for the WWE Championship at the Royal Rumble. Of course, the big thing now is that CM Punk has announced that he's going to the Rumble himself. We all kind of think at this point in time, it seems like the path is going to be towards Punk versus Rollins for the WWE Heavyweight Championship, possibly night one. It could be night two. I wonder if it's night one, if Punk is still going to consider it a main event. Well, it wasn't a main event of the whole weekend, you know, but it looks like he is on track to get that main event at WrestleMania. Whether he'll win it or not, that's again, we're gonna have to see what happens with Punk. Again, we're in the honeymoon period. I think things are gonna be great. He's been okay on the mic. He can't be exactly the kind of CM Punk we saw in AEW, or even the CM Punk we saw before in WWE. But a lot of fans are suspecting that this is kind of a setup for the future. As far as Roman's concerned, Roman, he's having issues with Nick Aldis right now, which is kind of a fun thing to watch for those of us who know that Nick Aldis was kind of the Roman Reigns of Billy Corgan's NWA, and to see, these two historic world champions of the last decade, two of the best world champions of any promotions of the last decade being on screen, Nick Aldis and Roman Reigns. For those of us who know, that was a pretty cool sight, and Nick Aldis not backing down from Roman Reigns was pretty cool. Whether Cody's going to make it for this big rematch, is The Rock coming in, or we going to another challenger, we don't know yet. I don't think it's going to be Jey Uso. Jey Uso's been taking a lot of L's lately from what I've seen in WWE, so who knows. But it looks like we're heading towards what's going to be an exciting WrestleMania season. We're officially kicking it off now as we are rocketing towards the Royal Rumble. More announcements are going to be made. R-Truth is back, and the whole thing with him and the Bloodline, it's comedy gold. R-Truth is he's one of the things in WWE that's funny that actually works. So I'm excited to see that as well. So that's kind of the big stuff that came out of this past week in the world of pro wrestling and sports entertainment. There's other things with Mercedes Moné and rumors about her wanting major money. So it looks like she's not going to sign with AEW. She may be heading back to WWE. There's a lot of other wrestlers who may be moving around from here and there. 2024 is going to shape up to be a very extraordinary year. 2023 was not as newsworthy as 2022 was. There was a lot of crazy news in 2022. 2023 wasn't bad, but I think 2024, with what's been going on recently, with the changes in Japanese wrestling, some of the changes in Mexican wrestling, the downturn and now slow comeback of AEW and WWE signing CM Punk and what's going to happen with that. There's a lot to be interested in 2024 in the world of wrestling and sports entertainment. But I'm going to get to you guys with that later in this week as we do our year-end videos. But I want to know what you guys think about some of these news items. Let your voice be heard in the comment box below. And until next time, I'll see you guys here for more news, rumors, and commentary on the Rant and Review Pro Wrestling. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and all that good stuff. And I will see you guys later. Have a good day.